So I'd read one chapter of the 7-Year Slip and then one chapter of Powerless, and then one chapter of the 7-Year Slip and then one chapter of Powerless. So now we have to do the other two so that we get them. Hi, welcome back to my channel. So I'm starting a new vlog this week, and I'm starting it off with an update right off the bat because I did a lot of reading this weekend. The last vlog that I had ended last week on Thursday, and today it's currently Tuesday, and it's the week after, and I think Friday, the day after I finished my vlog, I actually ended up finishing a book. And that was The 7-Year Slip by Ali Poston. And I told you in that last vlog that I kind of was enjoying it, but I wasn't really sure if it was going to be like any more than a 3-star read. And I think the last time I updated you, I was only maybe 20% of the way through, maybe not even that much. Well, Friday, I was reading that, and I was also reading one chapter of Powerless at the same time. So I'd read one chapter of the 7-Year Slip and then one chapter of Powerless, and then one chapter of the 7-Year Slip and then one chapter of Powerless, because I just didn't really want to be reading the 7-Year Slip. Like, it wasn't gripping me that much, but I knew that I had to finish it quickly because my loan at the library was going to expire soon. So it was really crunch time and I really had to finish it. And so I was forcing myself to read it along with Powerless, which I had more of a desire to read. However, I would say once I hit maybe like the 25-30% mark or something on the 7-Year Slip, I started reading it and I just kept reading it. And all of a sudden I was like 10 chapters deep and I was like, I haven't even switched back over to Powerless yet. And I don't know, it just really gripped me all of a sudden, the story, and I finished it that day. So I read the first 20% or so across a span of like, I don't know, 5 days maybe. But the majority of the book I read in a single day, really like a single afternoon and then evening. And I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars and I rounded up to 5 stars on Goodreads, which is the craziest thing ever. I still can't even believe that came out of my mouth, that sentence, because I think that's the first contemporary romance book I have ever rated 5 stars in my entire life. I rated Bride 5 stars. I gave it 4.5 and rounded up to 5. But Bride by Ali Hazelwood technically is not contemporary romance. It's paranormal romance. She's a contemporary romance author, and to me it feels very contemporary romance-y, but it's not considered, you know, pure contemporary romance. But this one, The 7-Year Slip by Ali Poston, it is considered just pure 100% contemporary romance, and I loved it. I ate it up. The plot was so good and it was so creative, and I just wanted to see what happened between them and the main characters, and I loved him so much. I think the male main character was so well done, so well written. He was so sweet and so cute, and I really loved his whole character progression and just how he acted throughout the entire novel. And it jumps back and forth between different times across 7-year span. I loved him when he was young, and I also loved him 7 years later when he was older, and I just loved it. I think there were some things, of course, that I did not love so much, hence why I gave it 4.5 stars. Like, the writing I felt like was very repetitive. This like sounds so petty, what I'm about to say, and like so nitpicky, but I feel like it summarizes the whole writing style. There was like one sentence at the very end, like the last page or something like that, and the only reason I remember it is because it was so late in the book and it's still fresh in my mind. But the whole book was like this, and I'm sure if I looked through it again, I could find more examples. But the sentence was, she was looking forward to her week off so that she could enjoy her week of rest and relaxation. I don't know exactly, but it was basically that sentence, which you're probably thinking, when I say it out loud, really, it doesn't sound that bad. But it's just, why do you have to say her week? That exact combination, especially, but even just if it was week, why do you have to say that twice in a single sentence? It's just so annoying. And the whole book was like that. It was so much repetition, and not repetition like to be clever or to hint at something to the reader, but just like pure repetition because it's like the editor just didn't check it and the author just didn't find a different way to write it. I don't know. Like, it would have been so easy to say she was looking forward to her week, which she would fill with rest and relaxation, you know, or literally anything other than saying she was looking forward to her week where she would enjoy her week of rest and relaxation. We get it. It's a week. that was already established in the first half of the sentence. Like, I know that seems so nitpicky, but it's like the whole book was like that. And not even just within single sentences, but also there were so many ideas or so many phrases that were repeated so often. It just seemed like a lack of editing. I think it's because I read it in like almost one whole sitting, at least the majority of the book. And so everything was still so fresh in my mind while I was reading through it. I think if I split it up into different sittings, then I wouldn't notice the repetition so much. To continue though, I finished that and I really enjoyed it. I, again, am so shocked that I enjoyed it so much. And as I mentioned already, I was kind of going back and forth between that and Powerless by, I believe, Lauren Roberts. I will put it up here anyway so you can see it. I mentioned in my last vlog that it was really cheesy and cliche, and honestly the writing was pretty bad. The dialogue was really cringy and really unrealistic at times, and I mean it still is. I'm still reading it. I'm saying was as if it like I finished it a long time ago. I didn't. I'm still in the midst of reading it. I think right now I am maybe 50% of the way through, and I will say I'm kind of obsessed with it. But like obsessed with it in a, I realize the writing is really bad, but it's kind of like a guilty pleasure kind of obsession. Do you know what I mean? Like for me, that's also the selection. The selection is quite possibly the worst writing I've ever read in my entire life. I'm really sorry. I think the author is Keira. I'm sure she's improved, and I think it's great that she put a book out there, and I really respect her for it, but I'm just saying, I think it's the worst writing I've ever read in my entire life. I'm so sorry. But it's so bad and it's so cheesy. It's so cringy. It's like embarrassing to read it sometimes. I can't just read it all in one go. However, despite that, I have absolutely read the entire series. I think I've read it twice even. So for how bad I think the writing is and for how little I enjoyed like the actual logic and plot intricacies and writing style, it's kind of crazy that I've read it twice, but it's because the plot idea and the plot in general and what happens and the little details along the way really provided a lot of enjoyment for me. And again, it was like a guilty pleasure of mine. And it kind of seems like Powerless is the same way. And I can't stop reading it. And I just find myself being drawn back to it, and I just want to continue reading it and to see how it ends. And I'm like so invested in the characters, and yeah, I don't know. So I think it's going to be another one of those guilty pleasure reads. I think it's going to fall in line with The Selection and some other YA novels that I've read in the past. Speaking of YA novels, this book is quite literally a replica of YA novels in the past. And I mentioned that in my last vlog, but the more I read it, the more it seems to me like it is a replica, like one-to-one almost. And I now have officially decided that to me, this kind of feels like 70% Hunger Games, and then maybe 20% The Selection, and then 10% Fourth Wing in one. So it's not anything that's particularly unique. I do think this combination has never been done before. I'll give her that, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely very, very, very strongly giving off vibes from other YA novels, just kind of combined into like one, you know, Frankenstein's monster kind of book. And like I said, it's my guilty pleasure and I can't stop reading it. So I'm not complaining about it necessarily. I'm just throwing it out there. That's what it is. And so I'm reading that book. Also, I was just looking through books that were available at the time, and I ended up finding the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I'm maybe 40% of the way through, and I simultaneously love it and hate it. And I love it because I think that interspersed throughout the book are really good pieces of advice. However, the pieces of advice that he really pushes and the way that he talks about himself and his own life experience really grinds my gears, and I don't like it. I'm sorry, but I think he really sounds like an absolute tool. Like, I will give you an example of 2 scenarios that he presented us and 2 tips that he gave us from those scenarios. The first one was that when he was in school, like in university, and he got a grade that was less than an A on anything, he would go to the teacher during their open hours and he would really drill them about why he didn't get an A, what he can do next time to get an A, etc., etc. And he said the one benefit was that you can learn about your teacher, how they grade, what their biases are, whatever, which I agree with. I think that's okay. But then the main reason why he was doing this is because he literally said, his words, that you annoy the teacher when you're in there asking all those questions and you make them afraid. His literal word choice, afraid, okay? You make them afraid to ever give you anything less than an A in the future. And that was his tip, to just annoy your teacher and basically bully them and manipulate them into giving you an A in the future so that they don't have to deal with you because they're afraid of you. That is awful advice. I think that is so, I don't know, scummy. It's like so sleazy and like, I don't know, it's just very poor character. I feel like I cannot imagine that any decent human being would do that. And he's like suggesting that as if it's great advice. And he's saying that you have to do that sometimes. And, you know, you really just have to get in there and annoy people into doing what you want, basically, or like manipulate them. That's not his word, but that's definitely my word. Manipulate them into doing what you want, which is awful. And that was just one example. And then his other example was that his friend challenged him to win. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was like either Muay Thai or it was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or something like that. It was like some sort of fighting. And his friend challenged him to win a tournament, and he only had like 8 weeks or something to win the tournament. And so you would think as a normal person, okay, so he just went really hard for 8 weeks training, learning super specific techniques to try to win. No, because he's not a normal, decent human being. He's really like scummy and sleazy. And what he did is he decided to read the entire handbook to find loopholes to basically cheat himself into winning the tournament. I understand it's not cheating if it's a loophole. I stand by what I said, especially when I explained to you what he did. What he did is he basically starved himself and stopped drinking water so he would lose all of his water weight a couple of days before the weigh-in to see which weight class he would be in. So then, because his weight plummeted, he was able to get into a really, really low weight class. And then he gained the weight back. He ate a ton and he drank a whole bunch of water again, and he like really quickly bulked up before the actual competition. And so then he said in his book, again, literally his own words, he bulked up so that he could dwarf them, an easier win against these guys. And I understand if, you know, it's not against the rules explicitly, then it's not cheating explicitly, and it is a loophole that he found. However, I still don't think that a decent human being who really cares about having a fair tournament would ever do this. It's very obvious he doesn't care about having a fair tournament. He just wants to win, and that is the only thing that matters to him. And if that was not bad enough, it gets worse, okay? How he actually ended up winning, again, you might be thinking, oh, okay, so he just fought those guys, you know, and he just had a little bit of an edge. No. What he did is he found another loophole in the handbook. And that loophole was if you push somebody out of the ring 3 times, then you win automatically. And so literally all he did is he made himself get into a lower weight class. So he was with a lot smaller, more petite people. And then he just used his then reacquired strength and mass to shove these people out of the ring 3 times, and then he won. And so he ended up winning the whole tournament this way. What the heck? I cannot even imagine how pissed the people must have been and how annoyed and upset and just everything, like the emotions that the people that he fought against must have been feeling. And the audience members seeing not a real fair fight with people who have actually trained and spent years mastering techniques and everything to win this tournament. Not that, but just to see some guy basically body slamming much smaller people out of the ring 3 times to win by loophole. Like, how can you possibly be proud of that? How can you possibly be proud of a trophy you won by doing that to get the trophy. That's just crazy to me. Like, it's crazy to me that he's so proud of it. He put it in his book and he said basically that you just have to find loopholes to work in your favor. And that's his big advice to everyone. I think that his big advice always sucks, and it always shows that he's kind of a sleazebag. However, the little pieces of advice in between and the general ideas, I think, are actually really useful, and I definitely see a lot that I could take away to my own life to make my own work life and my work week a little bit easier on me and free up a little bit more time, while simultaneously making a little bit more money. I absolutely think that he has some really good tips in there, but it's just like the tips are interspersed because I guess if it requires not completely throwing your morals out the window and being a little bit of a sleazebag, then it just doesn't matter to Tim Ferriss that much. I guess that's what it is. I don't know, but he just doesn't really seem to care about like those actual genuine tips. He cares much more about the like finding the loopholes and like kind of manipulating people or bullying people kind of tips. So yeah, I simultaneously really love this book. I simultaneously really hate it. I have no idea what I'm going to rate it. Honestly, it could go any way at this point in time. I think I'm just going to have to finish the book and see. So anyways, that's where I am now. I am just really this week going to try to focus on finishing Powerless. I also would like to start The Princess Bride finally, which was one of my June TBR polls. I think this week's going to be kind of crazy because this weekend my husband and I have a 5K race. It's the Spartan 5K. And so you run a 5K, but then in between every couple hundred meters or whatever, you have an obstacle that you have to overcome, and they're fitness obstacles. And then if you fail any of those challenges, you don't get to try again. For the most part, some of them you can try again, but in general, you don't get to try again. You just immediately have to drop down and give 30 burpees, which I thought would be easier before I started training for this 5K. And then I started doing 30 burpees as my warm up. And I realized that's actually really hard. I just feel like burpees are a monster of an exercise. I don't know. I'm a little afraid. We'll see how this weekend goes, but I will be taking you along with me. We'll see it at the end of this video. I am so tired right now. It is 1:30 and I still have hardly had anything to eat today. All I've been doing today is gardening and cleaning the house and trying to get stuff done, and it's been a stressful day. I've not read it all. However, I am here to update you because last night I finished Powerless and I gave it 3 stars. Like I said I would. However, I did really enjoy it. I did not really enjoy the ending that much. I wish it would have been a little bit different. Not because of just the romantic aspect, like I think that sucked at the end. You know, like it was just sad. It's not how I wanted it to end romantically, obviously. But I just mean in general, the ending, I don't know, it just kind of was like very predictable for the most part. And I don't know, just like every other YA book out there, like this is a little bit of a spoiler, so I'll just put like a timestamp on the screen of when you can safely skip to, so I don't spoil anything for you. So, spoiler now. The whole resistance thing at the end really made me mad. Like, the fact that it was kind of like they betrayed her in a way, like she intended for them to go up and then make it really clear that they're not like diseased and, you know, the ordinary and that everything is okay and yada yada yada. And then like he didn't, and he was like had a knife to the king's throat, and things just got like way out of hand, and it was really like who's gonna like the resistance now? You guys just made yourself so unlikable. Like that was so predictable and so much of a YA trope. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of people joining the resistance and then the resistance like backstabbing them because they had their own plans in the background. I hate it. And I just want a book where there's the resistance and then they band together with the resistance, the main character, and then things actually work out the way that they should. And the resistance actually does a good job for once. Like, it could have happened that the resistance did a good job and things still got out of hand. And then everyone still had to flee and, you know, whatever. Like, you could have had both. But instead she went with like the most basic YA trope, which was like, main character joins the resistance, girl gets backstabbed by the resistance, they didn't do what she wanted, they manipulated her, and I'm just so sick of seeing that. So that was disappointing. Yeah, but like I said, I did enjoy it in general. I think it was a fun, really easy read. And also, I'm, you know, I'll fall head over heels for any dark, broody love interest, like male main character. Like, if he's got dark hair, if he's got dark eyes, also, I'm sold. And in this book, he's got dark hair and he has light eyes, but I will allow it in this case because he was really dark and broody and he's sarcastic and snarky, and I don't care how badly they're written. I love them. I can't get enough. I'll eat it up every single time. And I do feel like the writing in this book was not great. I did not like it personally, but I was able to look past that because of the dark brooding male main character, the love interest, and just in general the romance. Like, I just am such a sucker for any romance where it's like a really snarky girl who can handle herself and then she falls head over heels but doesn't want to admit it to herself, but she falls head over heels for this dark brooding male main character, and it's like a very slow burn, especially if it's enemies to lovers, which this book was like barely enemies to lovers. The whole time I was thinking it's like that meme about LaCroix, which I don't even think I've ever had LaCroix, so I don't know if it's even true, but I just feel like I hear all the time jokes about LaCroix where like the lime sparkling water hardly tastes like lime and it tastes like somebody poured the sparkling water into the can and there was just a lime somewhere in the room. And then they called it lime sparkling water. Or like they just had one single strawberry and they just poured the sparkling water over the one single strawberry, and then that was like strawberry sparkling water. And I feel like, to me, that was like the enemies to lovers in this book. It was like the enemies to lovers was in the room when Lauren was writing this book, but it definitely was not really in the plot. Not for me. Like, I feel like it's hardly enemies to lovers. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's an insult to the trope to call this book like a true enemies to lovers. And this also might be a little spoilery, so I'll also put a timestamp where you can skip to safely. But spoiler here. I think the second book is probably going to be more actual enemies to lovers because he's like actually having to hunt her down. So I have high hopes for that. Also, I have high hopes in general for, maybe not high hopes, but higher hopes for the writing, because I feel like practice makes progress and she's already written a whole book. She's writing this one, so hopefully, you know, her writing is getting better. I can see the potential. So I have higher hopes for the second book. And I think it might be a little bit more enemies to lovers, which I really like because I really like the hardcore enemies to lovers, like actual murder attempts, not just like the, you know, cheekily putting her knife to his throat and like slightly threatening him, but like her heart's not in it. Like, I don't care about that. I don't want that. I want like actual knife to the throat, drawing blood, and being happy about it kind of violence. For me personally, in my romantasy books at least. So yeah, this book was enjoyable, but not anything that blew me out of the water. But regardless, still enjoyable. I could see how maybe it could become a guilty pleasure book for me in the future. Like, I could potentially see reading it again just to, I don't know, just to get that feel again. And also, I am a little bit sad. I have like a little bit of a book hangover right now. And I'm feeling a little bit mopey about the fact that the second one is not out yet and I can't read it. I had no idea, or else I never would have even started it. And so now I have to wait, but luckily I don't have to wait too long because it comes out July 2nd or something like that. So I only have to wait like half a month, which I can do that, I think. But I did look up books. Where's my computer? I got my computer here because I looked up books last night when I finished it that have a similar kind of vibe, because it just wasn't enough for me. Like, it wasn't enough enemies to lovers, it wasn't enough actual murder attempts or anything, and I just want more of that type of vibe. I can't have enough right now. I don't know what it is. I just want like a romantasy that's enemies to lovers with a dark brooding male villain or love interest, whatever, both ideally. And I don't know, I want more. I want like a really nice slow burn romance within that also. And so I found 2 books that are really similar. The first one I found that seems pretty similar, I don't know, is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. She's also the one who wrote Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. And I really like her writing in general. I think it's definitely typical YA, but I do like it. And I think it's better than Lauren Roberts, I believe. And it feels like kind of the same thing. It's like somebody named Alessandra, and she's supposed to like woo the Shadow King, which right off the bat, that's so cheesy and I don't like that, but I'm gonna read it anyways. So she has to woo the Shadow King, then she has to marry him, then she has to kill him and take his kingdom for herself. I have heard from somebody else who I do like generally what they read, we kind of have similar vibes, that they really enjoyed this book. So I'm gonna give it a go because it seems like a similar vibe and it's available at my library, so why not? And then the other one seems very similar. It literally almost has the same exact tagline for it. I think in Powerless it was Hunted, Hunter, something like that. And this one is Her Deadliest Enemy or Her Greatest Love. But the tagline for it on Goodreads, on the description, is it doesn't get more high stakes, enemies to lovers, than a witch and a witch hunter falling in love. And it just gives me the same vibes. It's like Hunter, Hunted, and that's kind of the same vibe in both. It also seems very cheesy. It's by Kristen Ciccarelli, who I've never heard of before, but it has 4.24 stars. It has 60,000 ratings. So that's actually pretty decent. I feel like I kind of have high hopes for this. But unfortunately, the issue is that this book, Heartless Hunter, which is, by the way, it's a duology. It's called the Crimson Moth duology, and this is the first one, obviously. So the Heartless Hunter is not even in my library's catalog at all. When I look it up, there's nothing in my library. I can't even find it to click on a bell notification to be alerted when it's added to my library. And I don't know why. It was published February 20th, 2024, so it is kind of a newer book. However, it's not that new, and usually you still have the bell notification. Like, for example, with Powerless, I've already put the bell notification on so that when the second one comes out to my library, I'll be notified and then I can borrow it immediately, or at least put it on hold, depending on how many people get there first. Hopefully nobody. But that one is in my catalog and I can see it even though it's not published yet. And it just has a notification that says it's publishing whatever, July 1st, July 2nd. This one, The Heartless Hunter, The Crimson Moth, #1, not even in there. Not in my library's catalog at all. I can't find it, and I can't find it on any of my library catalogs at all. It's like this book doesn't even exist. It's very weird. So I don't know where I'm gonna read this book. I will say though, in general, I don't start a series if it's not complete. And I didn't know Powerless was more than one book. I don't know why I didn't know that, but I didn't. I thought it was only one book. And then I found out that there was a sequel. And then I thought, okay, it's just a duology. But then I found out it's a trilogy, I guess, which makes me so sad because that means I'm going to have to wait a really long time to finally finish it, which is why I usually don't ever even start a series if I know that it's not finished. And the Crimson Moth series, the second one, is not out yet. It's called Rebel Witch. And it looks like it's going to come out February 18th, 2025, which is quite a while. That's a solid, 8 months or something from now. And I'm not going to start a book if I know that I have to wait 8 months to read the second part of it. I don't like that. I can't do it. I forget what happens by the time I get to the second one, and I don't like unhappy endings or incomplete endings. I want a happy ending. So I don't want to start the Crimson Moth series yet. I've definitely added it to my TBR on Goodreads, and I'm gonna keep it in mind. And I've also added the second one, so I'll be alerted when it's finally published. And then once it's finally published, hopefully by that time it will be in my library. I don't know. I really hope so, but yeah, we'll see. But for now, I am going to start with The Shadows Between Us because it is available at my library and I can borrow it immediately. So I'm going to do that so that I can continue going on this like dark romantasy kind of vibe. I don't know, I'm just really feeling it right now. So I'm definitely going to stick with that for as long as this mood is holding me. And then I will be switching to The Princess Bride, but this is not the vibe. Like this, I don't want to read this right now. I want to read something like The Shadows Between Us. I'm just going to keep reading until I don't want that vibe anymore, and then I'm going to switch to The Princess Bride, hopefully, if the vibe fits then. Hi, so today's Thursday and I'm giving a quick update. It's not a great update. I started The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller and I don't like it. I actually really dislike it. I feel like the more I read, the more I dislike it. And the more I think about it, the more I dislike it. The more I talk about it, the more I dislike it. So that's really unfortunate because I had really high expectations, but truly there are 1,000 reasons why I don't like this book. I think the writing is good. I think it's way better than Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So I think the book has that going for it. And I think in general, the plot, I don't know, was a little bit more unique than Powerless at least. It's not a super unique plot, but at least a little bit more. So I thought that it has everything required to be better, to be like a 4-star read. I gave Powerless 3 stars. And as of right now, I don't think I could ever rate this book more than 2.5 stars. I think it might even just be 2 stars in the end. I don't know, unless something really happens in the end. I'm like 50% of the way through. So unless something really changes my mind in the last 50%, then I'm going with 2.5 stars. Still undetermined yet if that's going to be rounded up or if that's going to be rounded down on Goodreads. I have no idea. But I think that the love interest, Callias, who's the Shadow King, I think he is just kind of bland. I guess she is like trying, the author, you know, is like trying to be like, oh, he's a king and so he really doesn't have any time and, you know, yada, yada, yada. But the thing with that is then we hardly spend any time with him as a character. And so I'm just so unattached to him. I don't know anything about him. He's just some guy. And then the female protagonist, Alessandra, is awful. I really don't like her. She is so selfish. She's so egotistical. She truly only cares about herself. I've yet to meet anyone that she cares about other than herself, or at least anyone that she cares about more than herself. I don't think that exists. I don't think she can care about anyone more than herself. She's the most selfish protagonist I think I've ever read in my entire life. And she's just so whiny. She cries all the time about like how she wants recognition, she wants acknowledgement. Her older sister gets all the attention and blah, 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 blah. It's so annoying. And also, she's a huge playgirl, you could say. She has like flat out said in the book that in her desire for attention, she sought out attention from men. And she said she slept with dozens of men from the age of 15. And that's like, I don't know, something that she seems to be relatively proud of. And for me personally, that's a huge character turnoff if somebody sleeps around a lot and doesn't form any meaningful connections at all, and then is kind of proud of that. That is perhaps one of the biggest character turnoffs for me. I really don't like playboys, playgirls. I don't like that character trope at all. And as if that wasn't all bad enough, and as if I didn't like Alessandra enough, I feel like she's also really heartless. And I feel like Callias is also really heartless, and not in the kind of cheeky, dark, brooding, YA heartless kind of trope, whereas somebody's heartless, but then actually it turns out they're really sensitive and they were only acting that way to protect somebody else or for the good of the kingdom somehow, or for a revolution, you know, a resistance, just like anything. And in this book, as far as, you know, I've gotten 50%, they're just heartless. Like there's, you know, I don't know, there's no reason behind it. Like he's had a couple of issues that have been going on in his kingdom, and he talked to Alessandra a little bit about those issues, and she gave a couple of solutions, and the solutions are just like very cold-hearted. Basically like kill everyone. And like that's her solution. And they have like one issue that's a guy who's basically Robin Hood, and he's like stealing from the rich and distributing to the poor. And he's flat out said, like this Robin Hood guy, that, you know, the king's people are suffering because the king just has this urge to conquer other countries, and he's not stopping. He just wants to conquer other kingdoms, then I guess not countries, but he just is constantly conquering kingdoms, and he doesn't really seem to care about his people at all, and they're starving and they're poor, and he's just taxing them to get the money to fund his conquering, which I really don't like. Like that's what you would expect from like the evil father, and not like the actual love interest in the male protagonist. Like you would expect him to be opposed to that. Like that's kind of how it usually goes. And this is not like that. He's the one doing it. He is the one who wants more power, and he wants to conquer more countries, and he's just stepping all over people to get there, and he genuinely does not seem to care about it. And Alessandra doesn't seem to care either. She agrees with him. They are a good match for each other, even though there's literally been no romance at all, which I can get behind. I really like slow burn romance, and also I don't even need to have romance in my books, so it's not an issue for me that there's been no romance thus far. However, just throwing that out there, 50% of the way through, nothing. Not even a little inkling of anything. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but nothing. I'm just kind of waiting for Trisha Levenseller to drop any character lore that makes me like them, anything that's redeemable for either of them. I'm just waiting, 50% of the way through, still waiting. I don't know. And then also, although the writing is good, I feel like the plot is kind of boring. I'm sorry, but I just feel like not that much is happening other than court stuff. This book is like very heavily inspired by kind of like, to me it feels like French aristocratic 18th century, I don't know, somewhere in there. Like that's what it feels like. But also it has like a super weird, almost like 80s, 90s or gothic kind of twist to it. Like everyone wears black leather gloves. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And the main character, she wears like pants, like tight pants with an overskirt over it, but like it's open in the front and it's down in the back. That feels like an 80s kind of prom dress to me. And she wears like skirts that are high in the front and go low in the back, which again, super big style in like 80s, 90s, 2000s. And so it's like this really weird combination of like really typical aristocratic royalty kind of 18th century vibes, and then like modern weird fashion. And also, this is so tiny, but it bothers me so much. The main male protagonist, Callias the king, his haircut. I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate reading about it. I close my eyes and I picture something else every time. It is like shaved almost on the sides, like very closely cut on the sides, very short, and then like poofy on the top, like voluminous on the top. It's just this really weird combination, and it doesn't fit together for me personally, at least. And I don't like it. And I don't like reading about his hairstyle. I feel like that's so weird. Like for this, you know, super powerful shadow king, I don't know. It takes me out of it. It's like when you have like a really crazy fantasy book and everything has these wild names, and then like the main guy's name is John or something. Like, no hate against the name John, I think it's great, but I'm just saying, when you have to literally look up the pronunciation for like all of the other words in the novel except for the male love interest name, it just really kind of turns me off, because it just takes you out of the story a lot, I feel like. And with this book, I feel like I'm taken out of the story so many times. Honestly, I have a lot more things that bother me about this novel. As I said, I'm like 50% of the way through, and I kept thinking it would get better, but honestly, the more I read it, the more I dislike it, and the more my rating goes down. Like I said, I'm waiting for the, you know, I don't know, the twist to come, the ball to drop, the, you know, whatever, for the author to finally write them as redeemable people, but it's not happened so far. Hi, super quick update about The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I've officially finished the book and I rated it 2 stars. I think it was really bad, honestly. I think the description's not actually accurate to what it is. I kind of thought it was going to be proper enemies to lovers. There was no enemies in the enemies to lovers. I don't understand why this was categorized as this. I don't understand why some people are calling it that. The plot made it really sound like, I don't know, like she was really going undercover or something. And this was kind of just a girl who goes to a palace and then hangs out with the court and does like daily court life activities and then befriends the king and then eventually falls in love with him. And that's not what I was looking for. That's like the opposite of what I like to read. And I just found it really, really, really boring. And after reading this book, The Shadows Between Us, I actually like Powerless even more. And it's crazy because I thought it would have been the opposite. But unfortunately, this book just really was not my cup of tea. I think I should have just stopped reading it once I started thinking I wouldn't like it, which honestly was after like the 20% mark. But I powered through because I didn't want to DNF a book. Just wanted to give it a try, and I thought I kind of owe it to Trisha. I love her writing in general, like The Daughter of the Pirate King. I don't think she's spectacular, so to say, but I do think she's good. But I just really didn't like it. This book also was described as a Slytherin romance, and that also intrigued me. I think that's just a really cool idea. This was not that. Like this, I've heard it compared in one of the reviews, like J.K. Rowling kind of was very, I don't know, cast a wide net over the stereotypes that she put out in Harry Potter. And it was like Slytherin people are really bad. Like they're ambitious, but they're bad. And then Gryffindor people, like they're very brave and they're the heroes always. And then Slytherin is always like the anti-heroes or the villains, whatever. And I feel like Trisha Levenseller took that and then ran with it and thought this is a Slytherin romance, or at least she called it a Slytherin romance, and then took all of the bad traits from the stereotypical Slytherin person and made that the traits of the 2 main protagonists, the love interest and the main girl, Alessandra, in this novel. And it just was so awful. Like it was so stereotypical. It was so, I don't know, just no redeeming qualities for either character. Even to the very end of the book, there were still no redeeming qualities. I did not like either of the main characters at all. And not even I didn't like them, but I actually actively disliked them. And the only person who was a good person in the book, it turned out he wasn't actually that great of a person. And then, yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's just, you'd think that the Robin Hood in the book would, you know, I don't know, it would end up being a bigger part of the book, or it would end up like, oh my gosh, he's amazing. He's giving back to the kingdom and supporting the people and everything. But he was made out to be this awful villain for stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. And I really didn't like that. Like, I like the opposite. I would like to have read the book about Robin Hood and encouraged him and, you know, I don't know, had more with his storyline, because I think that's better. And I think that's a better personality trait, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, instead of what this book was, which was like stealing from the poor and then giving to the rich and increasing the riches of the rich and expanding the kingdom, even if it means trampling on everyone else and literally killing like families and villages and anyone who tries to rise up, just stomping them out. Like, and that was the book. And I hated that. I think it was disgusting. And also, the book was like it had such strong feminism vibes throughout, which I was totally fine with. I agreed with 99.9% of the time, and I think it was nice, but it was too much. It was a lot, and it was like really being pushed hard. And the issue was that it was being pushed so hard, and then it was like the misandry, like against the men, then it kind of, I don't know, flip-flopped. And there was one point where there was a man and he didn't want to sleep with a woman because he said he wanted to wait until they were married. And then they had literally just talked about the opposite of that, a woman wanting to wait until they were married to sleep with the man. And all of the girls were like, you go, like, stand up for yourself and your beliefs and everything. And then when it was the opposite, when the man wanted to do that, they were making up excuses. They were like, oh, he's just doing that because he's afraid, because he thinks that you don't want it or something. And then they were telling the woman what to do to get the man to sleep with her before they were married, even though he explicitly said he didn't want to. And so they were like praising the woman for that and telling her, stand by your beliefs, don't let anyone change your mind. And then when the man said that, then they were saying to the woman, oh, here's how you can trick him into sleeping with you, basically. And it was so weird and awful. And I really disliked that. And that was like way at the end of the book. If it was earlier in the book, honestly, I think I would have DNF'd the book from the beginning. But it was like the very last chapter or so. And it was just like, I don't know. I just didn't like it. I think 2 stars even. I would say maybe like 1.5 stars rounded up to 2, maybe 2. I don't know. But it definitely was not a good read, and it definitely put me in a little bit of a reading slump right now. And I don't have that much time to read anyways because we have the Spartan Race this weekend. So yeah. So final update for my vlog. It is Tuesday. Yes. And so it is officially the last day. I really didn't get any reading done since my last update. Sorry, I am definitely not going to get any reading done today. I'm just doing a lot today. And then also today we have a workout. My husband and I, we go to a calisthenics park. So we have that today. Right after our race, my body is still sore and I'm like completely covered with bruises. Like this is nothing. This is like the smallest bruise that I have on my body. And my other arm, I don't think you can see, but it's also bruised here. My thighs are just absolutely obliterated, completely bruised, because there's so many obstacles on the Spartan Race where you have to throw yourself over something. And because I'm short, I don't think I'm that short, but I'm 5'4", like 163 centimeters, give or take. And the average person in this race, I feel like, is way taller. And you have to climb over like 6-foot walls and 7-foot walls. I think there was even one 8-foot wall. And you have like a tiny step stool, like if you're a woman at least, like it's a little pink or a little red, like, I don't know, step built into the wall. They're wooden. But it really doesn't help you that much. Like you still have to really like push up, like almost like a muscle up kind of move that you have to do on the wall. Then you can't, you know, I guess you could theoretically just like fall forward and then flip, but I'm not that athletic. So what I do is I get up and then I just throw my leg over and then like push up with my leg and my 2 arms to push myself over. So because I threw my leg so aggressively over probably 15 walls in the span of this whole race, like my inner thighs are just obliterated. it was fun, the Spartan race, but it was definitely physically challenging, and I'm definitely beat up afterwards, but it was so much fun. I would highly recommend every person to do it. It was the coolest thing ever. I have my little medal here. It was just the Spartan Sprint, so it's the red one, and it's really cool. It has like a little piece right here because they have the 5K, which is the sprint, and then they have a 10K, which is the super, and then a 21K, which is a half marathon, and that is the beast. And so for every one you do, you get like a third of this thing, and then it's like blue for the super and it's green for the beast, and then it makes like the symbol that you see on the front with like these little pieces. So now we have to do the other two so that we get them. But I'm really not good at running, so I don't know if that's actually achievable for me. We'll see. I like it. It's like a really like heavy duty thing also. Like it's, you know, pretty high quality. It was so much fun. I would highly recommend everyone to do it. I think it's really feasible for truly any person to do. Like the obstacles, some of them are so incredibly hard, but the thing is, if you can't do an obstacle, you just have to do either burpees or a penalty loop, depending on what the race has set up. I thought we were gonna have to do burpees and I was so afraid, like really, truly so afraid. And then we got there and we found out that actually it's penalty loops. And those were really hard sometimes because for the spear throw in the Spartan race, you have to throw a spear in a target and it has to hit in the target and not fall out. And the back of the spear can't like fall down to the floor. So it has to actually properly be in. You had two chances and I hit in the target twice, but it like fell down to the floor both times, like the back of the thing. So it didn't count. And so I had to do a penalty loop. And the penalty loop was a chain. I'll include a picture like over here of some other person with the chain so you can see like how thick of a chain it is, like a rusted old chain that's 40 kilos, which I don't even know how much that is in pounds. It's like, I don't know, 80 pounds, give or take. I don't know, it could be like 90, it could be 70, it could be something else entirely. I couldn't even lift it up. I'm being honest, like I thought I was strong enough and I was like doing all the obstacles and I was so proud of myself. And then I came to this and it was the first obstacle that I failed. I failed that one, the spear throw, which is so hard, especially because how can you possibly practice it in real life? Like I don't have a spear. I don't have, you know, target practice. I can't just like on my terrace in my neighborhood, you know, be like spear throwing and everything. And then I also failed the rope climb because that thing was so tall. I think it's 15 feet and like 5 meters or something, give or take. I don't know exactly, but it literally was so tall. And the guy there was like so, I don't know, fear-inducing. Like he was so sweet, but he flat out told us, if you're not feeling strong enough right now, don't do this because he said, if you get up to the top and you don't have the strength to bring yourself down, he said, either you're going to slide down because you don't have the strength to grip strong enough and then slightly lower yourself down. And he said, you're going to lose all the skin on your hands. You're not going to have anything left. You're just going to be little bones, which is horrifying. And he said, you know, and then if you get too scared and everything, he said, nobody's going to help you. We don't have anything to get you down with, you know, nobody's going to climb up after you and like carry you in their arms down to the floor. Like you have to do it yourself. And if you get scared up there and you just let go because you stayed up there for too long and your grip wore out and you just can't hold on anymore, he said, you're falling down 5 meters. He said, that is really going to cause some serious injury. So he said, don't even attempt this if you're not feeling strong enough. And so I was with my friend Nikki and we both kind of like lifted ourselves up on the rope a little bit to see like how strong we were feeling in our arms. And both of us were like shaking. And so we said, no, we're just going to skip this. We're not even going to try. So it was the only obstacle where I didn't even attempt really to do it because that guy like really put the fear of God in me. So just the two obstacles, but I did everything else, which I was so happy with because they had a new obstacle called the tilting ladders. And it's basically monkey bars, but they're like tilted this way. So you have to pull yourself up, which is really hard, especially because they're spaced really far apart from me at my height. And then you have to basically like jump across to the center bar and then jump to the other ladder, which is then down. And then you do the same thing. You go up, and then once you're at the halfway point, it tilts forward, and then you get to go down, which is super easy. And then you have to hit the bell at the end. And I thought there's no way I was gonna do this, and I did it, and I was so excited. I'm like still like pumped like 2 days later. And also there was another one, the multi-rig, I think is what it was. And that one was so much fun too. It was also kind of a monkey bar type of thing. It was a pipe sideways, so you had to kind of like shimmy across it. And then it was rings. And that was so much fun because you got to swing like a monkey. Like literally like hold onto the ring and then swing back and then go to the next one. And that one was like my favorite, I think, in the whole thing. I wish we could have gotten to do it more. Like I wish after you finish the race, you had the opportunity, like they just had like an hour for like a free run where you could just go back and like do more obstacles and practice and just have fun, because it was so much fun. So yeah, it was so much fun. I could talk about it for like 50 years, honestly, but I think this video is already really long. I've yet to put the videos together, so I have no idea, but I think it is. So I'm just really quickly gonna say, I think you should do it. And I think it's so much fun, and I'm sure there's one that's near you, or you could do the Tough Mudder or something. It's just so much fun to try something so challenging and to push yourself so hard and see what you can accomplish. Because like I said, there were obstacles I thought there's no way I'll ever be able to complete this. And then just like having a friend there to encourage you, and the volunteers were so sweet, and they gave tips and pointers, and they also really encouraged you. And I think the community is so amazing. If you're afraid to do some obstacles, or if you think you just aren't strong enough to do some obstacles, you can always try and then just do the penalty loop or just do the burpees, depending on, you know, what it is in your area. If you can't do it, that's always totally fine. That's the point of the race. It's so much fun. You get to challenge yourself in this really fun, encouraging environment. We definitely want to do it next year. My husband wants to do the super. I'm not interested in that. My husband did really well though. Like he left us, of course, in the dust. He, I think, only failed one obstacle, the spear throw. And there were almost 1,000 people that weekend. It was like 970 or something who did the sprint in the open heat. And I think my husband got like place 17 or 18 or something out of like almost 1,000 people, which was crazy. He actually ended up finishing the race in like 42 minutes or something, I think. And it took me and Nikki 1 hour and 29 minutes or so. I'm happy that we got under the average time it takes a person to complete this race at least, but we definitely walked a lot more than we ran, that's for sure. So we took a lot longer than my husband, obviously. And he actually ran back up to meet us while we were doing the race, and then did the obstacles a second time with us because they were so chill at this race. And it was Sunday. We were like the last wave to go. And so there was like hardly anybody after us. That is all I'm gonna say about it because I've already talked about it more than enough. Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this vlog. I think probably it's gonna be a long one, and I'm really sorry about that. But if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. You are the best. And please let me know in the comments below what you think about the books that I've been reading this week. And also let me know if you've ever done a Spartan race, or if you've ever done like an obstacle kind of, I don't know, strength 5K. Like I want to say fitness 5K, but a 5K in general is fitness. So let me know if you've done something like that, because I'd really be interested to hear what your opinions were and which one you did, because I think it would be really fun for my husband and I to just go through and do a ton of different ones and like test them all out. So let me know in the comments below if you've done anything and what you thought about the race. And yeah, I will see you in my next vlog, and I hope that you all have a great day. Goodbye.